and start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
It's astonishing.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.
Three, 2, 1, action.
Hello everyone, welcome to ProAV. Thank you so much for joining us for the first, hopefully, of many Blackmagic live streams on Resolve. Apologies for the slightly late start. We had made some changes to our streaming setup which we decided to backtrack on. They weren't working quite properly, so we've gone back to the normal way of doing things at the very last minute, so apologies for the 15-minute delay. But I'm quite excited about this stream because I love talking about Resolve. I love talking about posts. So hopefully this is one of the... I don't get to do it very often on this channel at all. So hopefully this is the first of many we can do like this. But I'm joined by Simon Hall, who I think it's safe to say is probably one of the leading... Not to give you too much of a compliment to get started, but he's one of the leading specialists for Resolve for Blackmagic in the UK, if not Europe. Probably.
Yeah, well, our office looks after EMEA, so yeah, we look after Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I have a team of great guys who help me because, like, you know, I don't know much about audio, but I have a guy that does. So that's all good. So
thank you so much for giving up your time to come and talk to us. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure, not a problem.
So, like I said, hopefully we're going to do a few of these, but we thought a good starting topic would be the differences between the free and the pay for studio versions of Resolve. Yeah. Partly because it can get a little bit confusing at times because, to be honest, because you give so much into the free version, it's really feature packed. But also I do have a slight, I think a lot of customers I have a preconception that I think a lot of our customers' knowledge on the differences will be based, much like mine is, on what it was like maybe 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
Whereas it's something that is constantly changing. So it's probably something that's good to do every now and again, really, anyway, isn't it? But yeah, I thought it would be worth running through the differences.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always like to talk about it because, as you say, the landscape sort of changes, and it's still the most common question we get because obviously we have a free version that we give away and people use, and at some point they kind of hit the limit, and it's that whole thing of going, well, do I need to? Do I not need to? And as you say, the free version does so much. You know, you can edit, you can grade, you can master your audio with a load of tools that are in the free version. It's only when you get to a certain point where you go, oh, it'd be really good if I could do this. So sort of the studio features are slightly more specialist. However, they do some very, very cool things where people go, oh, that's great.
Sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it said it just kind of fixes things. Yeah. The one thing I would sort of talk about to begin with, sort of the misconception about the free version is just about resolution. Because one of the things we always say, the free version is limited to Ultra HD. But what that means is it's limited to rendering. So if you need to go beyond Ultra HD to 8K, or you're doing things for cinema delivery, so 4K DCI, that's when you would need a studio version. But I think what people always think is when you're limited to Ultra HD, they always think, oh, I can't
put in my 6K files from the Blackmagic
exactly
6K.
This, yeah. You know, you've got 8K files and it's sort of, oh, I can't use that. But the answer is yes, you can. You can decode any resolution. It's just when you render out. And obviously, for most people, Ultra HD is kind of enough.
Oh, yeah.
So going beyond that, again, it's sort of getting to that level, you know, if you are delivering, say, for a film festival and you've got a short and, okay, it's got to be DCI 4K, then you're into the studio version after that.
Gotcha. And it's also probably worth saying just at the start, defining what we mean by the studio version, because so that is I think it's just under £300, is it?
It's two... Oh, you've got me there on price. I think.
Shall I look it up?
Yeah, if you look at the ProAV's website, I want to say, are you going to test me? Is it 245?
Let's see.
The price is
235 XFAT. What is that?
Okay.
Ink fat. 282. We've got it on line
282.
for at the moment. But something we run into with customers time and time again is that you guys give away the studio version when you buy quite a few pieces of kit, and that includes all your cameras. But it also, really interestingly, includes quite a lot of the Resolve hardware as well. So that sometimes is a better way of buying it than just buying the studio license, right?
Absolutely. What I would say to people is if they're kind of new to Resolve and you're looking to buy a studio license, it's much more value for money to actually buy a panel, whether that be sort of the micro panel that I've got sitting alongside me now, or even a speed editor.
Well, the speed editor is 348 ink fat, so it's only 60 quid more or something like that. And so it really makes a lot. You're basically getting that studio editor for 60 quid.
Yeah, exactly that. So
speed editor.
Yeah, and this is what you do is if you look at, you know, you're looking at buying a license, have a look at the hardware as well, because the speed editor, as the name suggests, you can really start throwing things together. You know, if you're doing sort of social media editing, if you are doing interview work, it's great if you've got 2 or 3 camera interviews and you just need to throw them all together very quickly and chop them up using the cut page and the speed editor. Massively speeds up that workflow.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's what I would say to people is if you're new to it, have a look at the hardware as well.
Sure. Okay, cool. Just before we get started, for those of you watching it live rather than watching it back, I can see all the chat. For example, Kevin talking about our tech problems at the beginning. I can see your things and pop them up. Oh, I'm popping it up and down lots of times. I can pop up any of the comments as we go, so that feel free to ask your questions as we go. There's no pre-prepared slides for this one, no PowerPoint presentation to go through. This one is just going to be a chat backwards and forwards, so absolutely ask questions as we go. That is absolutely fine, and I will bring them up on screen and bring them into the conversation. And you're completely right, Kevin. Tech doesn't always work instantly. This was software. We were trying to go a different software route to do things like the comments popping up, and it was dropping the overall quality of the entire stream. I won't get into it, but you're right. Never try and do things last minute. Right, should we dive right in? Where do you like to start with this?
So, I'll start at the beginning because there's a huge number of features in the studio version of Resolve. For some people, they're quite niche, some HDR tools that, you may not use a part of the studio version, but there's sort of some features that kind of just sort of run through all the pages and are massively time saving for a lot of people. There's a big interest in that. And most of those focus around our neural engine. So Davinci Resolve Studio has the ability to use the neural engine. There's the odd one or two features that you can use in the free version, things like color match, but some of these sort of really cool effects and processes that just speed up your workflow and help to smooth out problems are just massive.
Yeah.
And again, when people think of the neural engine, they think of very cool stuff, things like the magic mask, which I will show you a little bit later on.
Yeah.
But it sort of runs through everything. So even things like sorting media is a prime example, because let's face it, we all hate sorting media. If you're an editor, or you're doing your own production and you throw all your clips in, the last thing you want to do is go, I have hundreds of clips to wade through. Can I find people? Can I identify the audio? And the answer is yes, you can through the neural engine. So what I thought I'd do is start at the beginning with things like the media pool.
Sure.
So if we take a look at my Resolve interface here, I've got a load of clips in here. Now, already the AI started to work. So when I throw my clips in, I've got a mixture in here. I've got some graphics, I've got video, I've got audio files. The neural engine immediately starts to work as soon as you import the media, because we have something called collections. And if you import any sort of clip, it can immediately identify things like audio-only clips. So as you can see here, it's already started to identify audio-only clips. But as you can see, I've got other collections in here. I've got things like dialogue, music, effect. Okay, so which of these clips actually contain dialogue? So what I can do is just select them all, and basically I have something called audio classification, and the neural engine will just go away and just kind of rip along and analyze my clips into some form of collection. Just before, somebody will probably ask this comment of going, oh, what machine are you using on this? Because it did that quite quickly. I'm using, just to sort of put this out there, I'm very excited. I got a new MacBook Pro. So this is an M3 MacBook Pro.
The Max?
No, not a Max. Just
the normal.
Just the Pro. I've got
M1 Pro, M3 Pro.
I've got upgraded memory. But that's it. So just apart from the upgraded memory, it's a standard machine. So again, you can see how kind of the neural engine is working with this new silicon hardware.
And for the record, the computer behind me is also a MacBook Pro 16-inch, but the M1 Max, so fully upgraded, but M1, so a few generations old now. And I use these every single video that we do. Not the audio classification, because my videos are quite simple, but things like the stuff you're going to talk about later, a lot of that neural engine stuff I do, and it also flies on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something sort of I can touch on. One of the great things about Resolve is our developers are fantastic. So they work, Resolve is sort of written for this new technology. Our developers work with the likes of Apple and NVIDIA. So Resolve is really sort of optimized to run on this new silicon hardware. If you have a Windows machine with an NVIDIA GPU, again, Resolve is harnessed to run that. So things like the neural engine processors work really efficiently with these new systems. So as you say, so even on a laptop, I can do some very, very cool stuff very quickly. So yeah, just going back into that. So basically what's happening here is it sort of analyzes the clips. So now, for example, if I go into here and go into dialogue, you can sort of see, I'll just open up one of these clips. Here are all my clips with dialogue. It's sort of identified. I'll just fast forward to where Robin's actually speaking. And said it's just identified. So again, it's that idea of the stuff that's boring, the stuff that can take time, it's just immediately done for you. It's the same with sort of facial recognition as well. I could analyze the same clips. I've got something that says analyze clips for people. So again, we've got facial recognition. So again, if you've got a drama with multiple characters in and you need to sort of just identify which clips they're in, there we go. So again, I can just double click this. It's created a bin. This is Robin Larson, one of the drivers. And as you can say, it's identified all the clips he is in. So again, I can just give him a name. I think that's how you spell it. So again, you know, if I go into the people smart bin now, you can see, oopsie, sorry, just caught my mouse. If I go into the smart bin now, I've got the Robin smart bin. So every clip that he's in, it just magically appears. Excellent. So again, yeah, the neural engine, yes, it does very cool things, but it can do some of the heavy lifting. For
documentary work, there's the first thing that springs to mind for that. Say I've got documentary work, or even corporate work, and I need to find, I just need a little bit more B-roll of this CEO. Let's just type his name, and boom, there we go. I mean, that's fantastic.
It is. It's so quick. And then when you couple it with sort of this next process for me has sort of revolutionized most things that I do. And it's the audio transcription.
Yes.
So this idea that, you can have a long interview and go, you know, I don't want to listen to a CEO go on for half an hour. I just want to find the pertinent bits of information.
Yep.
You can do this with sort of any clip that has audio on it. I've got something that says audio transcription. So basically what the neural engine does, it'll have a listen to the dialogue in the clip. It'll analyze it. And there we go.
Yep.
It's transcribed it. And now I can edit from that. So again, you know, we've got a little bit in here. So I can say, hey, I'm Robin Larson. I'm going to give you a tour of the car. So I can go, first bit with that. You can see as soon as you highlight the text, it marks the in and out points.
Yep.
So this is, again, and then I just append that into the timeline and just grab a next bit there and append that in.
Yeah, and this I do use because this for me is fantastic. So say I'm doing a piece to camera like this, I film myself doing that, and I might have done multiple takes. I might have messed up a sentence or gone, I didn't say that very well, and rewound a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I can see all of that in the audio transcription and just highlight, treat it like my script. Basically highlight the bit that I wanted in my script, put it down, and my rough cut's done in like 20 seconds.
Absolutely. And it's just this thing where even if you're kind of really lazy at editing, even if you know,
which I am.
I think we all are. When it comes to interviews, you're just going, I'll just grab the bits that I need. Admittedly, I've cheated with this one. I've already transcribed it, so you guys don't have to watch all my processing windows. But if you've got a long interview like this, where there's distinct pauses in it, well, all you say is just say remove silent portions. Then if I select everything and drop that down, it sort of edits it for me. It gets rid of all the silences and just edits everything down. So again, if you've got somebody who's sort of a bit nervous in front of the camera and keeps pausing, you can just throw everything down in the timeline without the pauses, then trim it back from there.
Exactly.
So again, it's this time saving.
For clarity, this isn't designed to be good enough to be your final delivery. This is designed to be, you know, get a rough cut down there for you to then tweak as you need to.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. The idea of our AI tools, it's never to replace the person.
Yeah.
Our AI tools are there to help sort of just speed up the workflow. Because that's one of our ethoses, is we like to give people the tools so they can spend time doing the creative stuff rather than, you know, conforming, chasing media that they don't have. That's why we put the edit page in Resolve and why it's developed over time, because, you know, you used to edit in third-party editing systems and then come into Resolve. But then you used to have to conform things. So you used to have clip mismatches and clips didn't always connect. So you then spent a lot of time, and that's not a creative process. That's just a process. And that's why we did editing in Resolve. So you can edit, you can do a bit of a grade, you can jump back again, and you're spending time doing the stuff that you really want to do, not chasing, you know, metadata errors.
Absolutely.
Which we all love.
I do not miss having to mess with XML files.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Before we go on to the next thing, Kevin has just popped back with another little question saying, it's less of a question, more of his situation.
Yeah.
I mean, he's saying, I'm looking at using the studio version for editing and rendering XAVCI 4K video from a Z280 camera. My videos are for rock bands. I record gigs. Would the studio version be better for my needs? I mean, yes, absolutely it would. One thing I would say is the speed editor as well. So on a slightly separate topic, the speed editor is probably really relevant for anyone doing that sort of multi-camera music live gig. The rough cut with a speed editor speeds things up a lot, right?
Yeah, hugely. Again, Carl, we've already talked about it. It'd be great. At some point, I'll come back and do that. We'll come back and take a look at that because, using the speed editor with the cut page, if you've got a multi-camera shoot, and again, for gigs is ideal because you can sort of sync via audio and then see all your clips. And then using the speed editor, you can easily sort of very quickly edit your multicam and write clips onto the timeline using the speed editor. So... Again, I'd love to come and do that. That's maybe that something else we could look at.
That sounds really great. And is there any of these, since he's told us a little bit about his situation there with rock bands and gigs, is there any of these studio features that would be particularly relevant, do you think, to that kind of work?
It all depends on what you're doing. I would think, are the videos going out for social media, for example?
I don't know, Kevin. Do you do anything on social media? But I know the bit you're alluding to there, and it's very cool.
So, I tell you what, Kevin. If Kevin's going to ask his question, what I will do is let me jump on because I actually have a pre-prepared timeline. So, obviously, normally what happens with a lot of stuff. This is sort of thanks to Anton Nelson and the guys from Monster Energy for this footage. They sort of do this sort of nitrous, it's an electric rallycross series in the States, and they film all of this. It's all shot on our cameras, edit and resolve. They do a lot of editing on the iPad as well. And basically what happens is they will do, again, I'm very old school to go what I would consider a correct aspect ratio. But obviously now they do an edit for 16:9, and then they have to do things for social. So Monster want everything on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and therefore you've got to do a portrait. Now, the thing with this is that's fine. Again, the idea of where Blackmagic cameras come over is you shoot 6K, and you don't like this is here is a lot of these are 6K files. You don't crop them in, so they film the frame quite nicely, and they still look quite good. But if I just mute this a second, you have these sort of problems. So this is fine. This clip is fine on 16:9. But old Robin here likes to have a wander around. He's showing people around the car, but obviously he's not staying in frame. So now the old school way of doing this is you'd sort of go, well, let me bring up my transform tools and see if I can kind of keyframe this. But again, using AI now, if I go into my inspector, I've got something called Smart Reframe. And you can just use, a lot of the time, you can just use the auto setting. So if I just reframe this, again, it'll do a little bit of analysis. The AI will go, the neural engine goes, okay, Robin's the subject of this. So now when I play this back, it will keep him in frame. And actually...
It does a really natural job of that.
It does a really natural job of it. And it's just auto-adding keyframes. So again, I can show the keyframes there under the transform options. You can actually see the keyframes being added.
So does that mean you can, if it's all of a sudden done something really weird and jumped over to one side and then gone back, you can go in and manually correct that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can go in, and you can even see, if I just punch into here, you can actually see the parameter actually moving away as you go along. So again, that's great. If you have sort of a subject whereby, let me just punch into this a little bit further. So again, if I sort of just position this ever so slightly, if I've got something like this, obviously what happens here is the car sort of again moves off the screen. If you can also kind of keep one point in focus. So the neural engine, when you've got a person in the shot, it'll go, oh, that's the person. But if you've got something specific you want to keep in shot, the neural engine actually say, well, I can actually do a reference point. So again, I just want the number on the car. So if I just reframe that, again, it'll analyze, and now it'll just animate the clip back to follow that. So yeah, something like that again, because let's face it now, a lot of stuff needs 16:9 delivery, but then social media delivery as well.
Now, can you use that not in vertical orientation? Can you use that in 16:9, but if you've cropped in to something to follow, does it also work there?
Absolutely. Let me just go into here and let's go and find a clip. Need something with a little bit of movement on that hasn't had loads of my effects applied to it. Let me see if I can... do I have something? Let's try. Let's give it a try. With one of these. So again, if I sort of punch into this a little bit... And the old yoga hammer there. Let's see if it'll do this. So again, if I simply say, give me a reference point. There it is. So again, I say, okay, yoga hammer logo. Let's see if we can punch that in. Maybe not the best example of a shot, but you get the idea there as well, yeah, because when it's got that little wobble on the old keyframe there. In fact, I don't... You can see, yeah, you can see there, it sort of wobbles the keyframe a little bit. So again, I could always go in and delete that.
Yep.
So
yeah, it tries at the beginning.
Admittedly with that, yeah, is...
but on some clips.
But on some clips, yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
On some clips, you can do it, yes. As I said, if you punched in, the reference point will follow. So yes, you know, if you're doing gigs and stuff, that would help. Depending on your slow motion as well, because obviously you can shoot at higher frame rates. However, you may have, you know, a remote camera setup, especially if you're doing a gig, you might have a remote camera setup whereby, you know, you just want to slow the clip down, but then the problem you've only got 25 frames a second. I'm going to do a little sneaky thing here. This is actually a compound clip. So I've got a little difference in here. So if you take a look, this shot is a prime example, and let me just punch into it a little bit. If you slow a clip down, obviously you've only got a set amount of frames. So if you do 50% speed, you're playing 25 frames back that need to fill 50 frames in effect. So you, as everybody's sort of done this, you get this sort of horrible sort of staccato movement that isn't great. Sort of an easy way around that is you can do in Resolve, you can, under retiming scaling, you've got the option that says frame blend. So all frame blending does, it'll attempt to smooth that motion out. But then the problem is all it's doing is just blending frames. So you end up with sort of frames like this where, because it's, you know, it's blending two frames together, it just looks blurry. You then have the option of doing something called optical flow. And you can do these are all available in the free version. So in the optical flow, basically the missing frames, the frames that you don't have, optical flow just goes, oh, I'll take a guess at what those look like. And you get a much smoother movement. But again, if I look at the background in
this
here...
This is a challenging clip.
Yeah, it's a challenging clip. If you look at the background, it's still not...
Yeah, there was a duplicate and it went on one side and then the other side and then the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it does some sort of... There's some sort of weird there. You can see you get that sort of weird warping in the background. Where again, just because it's guessing, it's not quite sure what the frame looks like. The final clip that I've got here has something called speed warp put on it. Again, it's using the neural engine. So
this is a studio version.
This is a studio feature. It's using the
I don't think I knew about this.
So what speed warp does, it uses the neural engine and it basically it learns what the missing frame should look like. So when you play this back, you get none of that sort of weird warping in there.
Yeah, every frame doesn't have a duplicate in it.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
So again, it's that idea. Speed warp just helps you get around that problem of going, I didn't shoot this at a high frame rate and we need it to be really slow motion.
Excellent.
And said, yeah, it's just the neural engine. The one thing I would say is people can see there, I've cached this clip. It's quite an intensive process. So to get real-time playback, normally what you've got to do is cache it. Yeah. But it's an easy process.
Very cool. Yeah. We've just had a question from Eugene who says, I'd love to see any examples using NRAW clips if you have any. By NRAW, I think he means Nikon RAW, so I'm doubting that you have any clips that are shot on a Nikon camera. Just putting a guess out there.
Yeah.
But thank you, Eugene. So we will be... I mean, Resolve can handle pretty much... Presumably can handle NRAW.
Yeah, we can handle... As far as I'm aware, any RAW file from any manufacturer. So as you say, whether it's Nikon, Canon,
Apart from ProRes RAW.
apart from ProRes RAW. Yeah, I knew you'd get me on that one.
I wasn't going to mention it, but
that is something above my pay grade. It's basically what I tell people is it is Apple's format, and basically they decide what to do with it.
sure. But Nikon RAW, Canon RAW,
yeah,
those kinds of ones.
yes, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Cool. So it's basically said when it comes to certainly editing, the studio features are these things that just said speed up the processes, get around the issues. When you start to get into more, dare I say, what people would consider cool stuff, things like effects and fixing clips. This is where the AI, again, for me, it sort of takes another level. It really does sort of push through. Because again, we can add effects in the edit page quite easily. There's an effect I'll talk about in just a second. Funnily enough, it's not a neural engine effect, but I always like to mention it because of what it does, and it sort of explains what we do as a company as well. So, you've got some very sort of useful effects that you can apply in the edit page that are studio only. If you do this in the free version, it'll watermark your screen. It'll just say Davinci Resolve Studio. It'll give you the option of, say, do you want to buy now? If you hit not yet, what you can do is you can still preview the effect. So you can still sort of have a play around and see what it looks like. But it's obviously watermarked. If you then decide you do want to buy it, again, come see you guys. They can buy a license, and the project, it's updated automatically. So once you install Studio and put your license key in, the project updates automatically. So the filter that you've applied in the free version and got it, how you look, got the look how you want it to look, it'll then just remove the watermark. So the upgrade process from free to Studio is fairly straightforward. Yeah.
Nice. Eugene has just come back with another thing on the Nikon. There are many of us that will now have to leave FCP to be able to use NRAW, so we need as much info as possible. Perhaps a new video for the future, Carl. It's funny you should say that. a Nikon camera has come into the showroom for the first time in years today. We are looking at doing a bit more stuff on Nikon because some of their new cameras, like the Z8 and stuff like that, are beautiful cameras. So yes, possibly. Thanks for the suggestion. Yeah. Right, let's get on to some of the cool things.
Okay, so the cool thing is, this is straightforward stuff. There's a lot of very cool filters that you can just drag and drop in the edit page. There are studio features. So, for example, this one, contrast in this shot isn't great. You can just drag the contrast pop in there and just get it to pop really easy. Yeah. Dead easy filter, apply, slide, adjust the slider. Away you go, real-time playback.
That's interesting. That's like a sort of mid-tone adjust kind of contrast, fine detail pop. Yeah. Rather than like a just add contrast step overall.
Exactly.
Nice.
Because again, we realise now, because Resolve has been an editor for quite a while now, we realise that not everybody wants to go into the colour page to do things. Yeah. So a lot of these effects are available in the edit page, which, funnily enough, brings me nicely onto my next point. Sorry, that's me clunking my my coffee cup. And it's noise reduction. Now, noise reduction isn't a neural engine feature, but it's always been in the studio version of Resolve. But it explains why we included Davinci Resolve Studio license in the box with all our cameras. Yep.
Because with RAW, it is an important part of the process.
Exactly that. Because again, what people often ask us as well is, why do you guys have no noise reduction in camera? And the reason for that is you can get much better noise reduction in post than you can in camera. So definitely. Again, you can do this you can actually do this in the color page because it's got its own panel in the color page. But even if you just want to do it.
I did not know that you could add this in the edit page. I'm learning so much today.
So, as you say, you can add it in the edit page now, and the parameters are the same as what you have.
And the results are the same. There's no quality difference. Yeah. That's going to save me a bit of time.
Yeah, Exactly.
Daniel's over there.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Because again, you know, we realise that people are editors, and as soon as you open the colour page, people go, "Oh, there's nodes and things going on here.
Sure.
What is?"
And
what
I
is
love
that?
the colour page, but I quite frequently, when I'm editing, go, "Oh, actually, that one. Let me just noise reduce that." While I think about that, I'll add noise reduction to that clip.
Yeah.
And then I have to go into the colour page, and then I have to find it, and then I have to add a separate node for it, and then I have to go down and find it on the tabs at the bottom. Whereas that's just going to speed things up massively.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And as I said, it's this is why we do noise reduction after the fact, and
Sure.
it's to do with this temporal, because we do noise reduction in two different ways. You've got temporal and you've got spatial.
Yep.
Carl's obviously, you know, camera guy. Everything that's done in camera is spatial because it just looks at noise and then tries to blend it out. The downside of that is eventually your image starts to go mushy. Yep. The reason
Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Not even eventually. Quite quickly gets mushy.
Yeah. And this is why we don't do it in camera, because temporal, simply what it does is the frames either side thing. Basically, it'll look at a frame, look 3 frames back, 3 frames forward. It'll take pixels that don't have noise on and apply it to pixels that do have noise on. So one thing I always say to people is, you know, if you got something like this is shot on our camera, but the guys had to basically crank up the ISO because it was in the garage. And as you can see, hopefully you can see on the stream, you can see that. You can see the noise in there. And what I always say to people is try the temporal first, because it'll make your image look less mushy. So again, just by easily just pulling this up, you can say, I can just dial that noise out. I maybe don't want to go too far with it, but even with a bit of temporal, if I simply play that back now, let me actually punch in again.
I try and only use temporal as much as I possibly can, and also on the in camera versus post thing, I also find you get much better temporal noise reduction if you haven't had any noise reduction done in camera. So rather than having a little bit of spatial in camera and then applying temporal noise production, the temporal works better if the spatial wasn't there in the first place.
Yes, yeah, because as you say, it's looking at pixel information, and if those pixels are a bit more mushy, it's a little harder to identify. So, and again, that explains why noise reduction is a studio only feature, but it explains why it comes with all our cine cameras.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We've had a future product feature question. Any automatic editing for video podcasts in the near future? You probably can't say anything, I would imagine.
Truthfully, I don't know. As I said, the great thing about our dev team is Resolve, as you've probably seen, is it's a constantly developing piece of software. Our dev team,
and quickly as well.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's like when we did the camera app for the phone. The guys just decided, we're going to do this, and they just did it. It's unbelievable. Sure. So yeah, our development team, they always want to hear new ideas, and again, you know, if this is auto editing for podcasts, if this is a feature request, again, funnily enough, I've had another customer ask me this. So again, you know, absolutely, I can feed that back in, and the guys will probably have a look and see if it's possible.
There's a lot of people out there that, I mean, just like Kevin was talking about earlier with gigs and filming gigs, or doing simple podcasts, and they've just got to churn through so much of this stuff. I mean, even weddings, you know, the speeches at weddings or whatever. Just it's not necessarily difficult, it's just mind-numbing. And so having a rough cut done for you by I'm a bit dubious about the technology. I'm not sure if I would do it. I don't know. I mean, it's the thing with all this AI stuff, it gets better and better and better until it gets to the point where actually, I can definitely use that. But I can see the appeal. Yeah, absolutely. As you said, it's going to get you in the right ballpark, and from there you can just go and tweak and add bits in and take bits out, and get lots of B-roll, so you can hide all the edits. Exactly. Eugene has also asked, are updates to the studio version still free, and do you think that model will change anytime soon? Which is a really important point, because you don't charge for each new release that happens at the moment, do you? No, not at all. So the license is a perpetual license. As far as I am aware, I don't think this is going to change. Our owner, Grant Petty, is not a fan of subscription models. You know, again, as you know, as a company, we like to give people access to tools to go and do what they want to do, and Davinci Resolve is a part of that. So yeah, as far as I'm aware, there is no
plan to charge for upgrades. Again, if you are running Resolve 18.6 at the moment, there will be at some point further down the line, there'll be Resolve 19. You just go onto our support page of our website, download it, upgrade, and away we go. Funnily enough, the other thing to point out is on that as well, again, something we get asked a lot is your license is now a license key. So you just get a 25-digit key. And the license key is valid for 2 systems. So if you have a desktop and a laptop, you can run the license on both machines at the same time. It doesn't matter if, one's a PC and one's a Mac. We don't worry about the operating system. The license will work on both and you can run it at the same time.
Very handy. Very handy. Another question is coming from Nord Film Company. How's the performance of the Atomos Ninja 5 RAW files in DaVinci Studio on a MacBook M2 Pro? Now, the Atomos Ninja 5 would only do ProRes RAW, I believe. So those are the only type of RAW files that wouldn't be able to work inside DaVinci is ProRes RAW. So the performance isn't good.
There's sort of a way around it. If you need the RAW settings, there is a plugin that will convert ProRes RAW to Cinema DNG, so you can still use the debyer settings. If you don't sort of need all the debyer settings in the RAW settings in the color page, my advice to people is always, if you've got the ability to transcode to ProRes 4x4, for example, and render that out, you're still going to have the 12-bit color depth. You're still going to have all, your dynamic range in that file. You just won't have the raw settings itself in Resolve. So they're the sort of 2 workarounds for ProRes RAW.
Another question while we're in tech desk mode. Daniel said, do you plan to add support for other Adobe software files like Illustrator? His wife does the titles and lower thirds in Illustrator, and this is one of the big things preventing him from fully transitioning over to Resolve, presumably away from Premiere Pro, I would imagine, if he's in the Adobe world. Now, you can do some... Can you do PSD files?
You can do PSD files. So obviously we can read PSD files. If you just import them in as a graphic, you can... they could just come into Resolve flattened. However, if you go into Fusion, it's grayed out at the moment. I'm not in the Fusion page, but as you can see in here, if you go into Fusion, you can do a PSD file. And with that, what it'll do is it'll drop it into Fusion, and each layer will become a node, and it'll all merge into a single graphic.
Very cool.
Yeah, so yes.
So I'm wondering if there's a way of exporting from Illustrator as a PSD file or something like that.
Potentially.
That could be something to look into, Daniel.
Yes, potentially, yeah. You've reached my limits of knowledge on Illustrator.
I'm well past my knowledge on Illustrator. I don't know Illustrator at all. I think I've opened it once.
I used to use it about 10 years ago.
Yep. Right. What is next on the list of features?
Okay, so this is sort of where we step into the realms of, well, dare I say, Blackmagic. We step into the realms because when you start to go into the color page, some of this neural engine stuff becomes incredibly clever. So what I'm going to do, some of these effects you can use in the edit page, but some of them are color page only because they have sort of more complex masking and things. So again, some of them are designed, well, a lot of them will save you time. But sort of what they do is quite incredible. Let me just cheat a little bit here. I'm just going to bring up my clips. I'm just going to shorten my timeline down a little bit so I know which clips I'm working on. So one of the first clips is face refinement. Now, again, it depends on what you're doing. If you are a colorist who's doing sort of heavy fashion work, for example, you will probably sort of use lots of power windows to really, really get a close-up of a model looking exactly right. Yep. If you're doing something like this, which is kind of fast turnaround and needs something for social media, old Robin here, not to pick on him too much. Let me just hide my clips saying not to pick on him too much. As they tend to do at these sort of nitrous events, it's race by day and party at night. So occasionally the drivers can look a little bit worse for wear. So, just to do a quick fix on this, we have something called face refinement. So the face refinement is very cool. It's an effect I can just simply drag and drop on. And if I just analyze, basically what the neural engine does, it sort of analyzes the face. So it works out where the eyes are, where the nose is, where the mouth is. And therefore, you can go in and sort of, poor old Robin, I do apologize. We can sort of smooth out the features. Again, you can go crazy with this, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have people, dare I say, a lot of the US guys love this for soap. So everybody can look uber smooth.
Plastic.
Yeah, plastic, basically. So I'm not going to do too crazy with Robin. So again, I can just sort of dial this, you know, just sort of dial the beauty up just a touch.
More beautiful, please.
More beautiful. If I sort of drop the contrast a little, just a touch. I could tint him. I might make him. He's looking a little. I don't want to do too much with that. I said give him a little bit more colour,
more blood in his cheeks.
Yeah, shine removal is always one. Funnily enough, the shine removal in this is absolutely fine, but you know when you get all sort of reflections on people's faces, the shine removal comes good. The eye retouching is the thing that everybody loves, though, because
eye brightening. Yeah,
eye brightening. So again, I can just sort of lighten. Sort of his eyes look a little bit dark. Eye bag removal, we can just sort of smooth that out. And there we go.
I've got to admit, I have used that one every now and again. I've got a young child.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't judge me.
Likewise, yeah. This is great. Again, if any of the viewers do weddings, this is what, dare I say, this is what sort of, you know, brides and grooms love, is to go, wow, you can just do that. And then because the neural engine's already tracked Robin's face here, again, if I just toggle that on and off, you can see I've just sort of smoothed that eye area out. But because it's already tracked and done it, there's nothing else to track. It just goes, yeah, done. Finished.
Yep. Very cool.
And I love that. And yeah, it's all of these things where you know when you're on set and you can't always gauge what you're shooting. You know, with stuff like this, somebody's giving an interview, so you go, right, we'll quickly set the camera up. And again, you'll see with this shot, unfortunately, the guys, it takes a massive wobble in it because the guys didn't even have time to set up sort of a tripod. So there's a sort of a massive wobble there. But again, we've sort of got a truck in the background, and you know, looking back at this, you could go, it'd be good if I could get a bit more depth of field. Be good if I could
separate him a bit.
Just give the background a little bit of softening. And this is where some of our really powerful AI tools come in. So the first one I'm going to show you is something called Depth Map. So what Depth Map would do, if I just drag and drop this on here, the Depth Map will, funnily enough, switch to black and white. Now, the AI is looking at the image and it's working out what it thinks should be in the foreground and what should be in the background and what comes in between. Again, I can go and adjust this. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to adjust the near limit. So basically, anything that's sort of white is going to get the full effect of what I'm going to do. Anything that's sort of grey will get a little bit, and anything that's black won't get anything at all. So this isn't actually changing anything about your image. This is effectively a fancy way of masking out a section of your image for you to do something. Exactly that. It's just a very, very clever mask. So again, if I turn off the depth map preview for now I can go and do is just, if I add another node. So does this apply to everything in the node chain after it? It depends how I connect it. Okay. So I'm glad you asked that. It depends how I connect it. So obviously I've got a depth map here. For those of you sort of new to nodes, you've just simply got the green connection, which is the processing. Yep. You've also got the blue node, which is the alpha, the matte. So again, if I drag the matte, it'll apply the matte to this next node. So again, you know, from here, as you say, I could maybe just sort of lift him up a touch. Mm-hmm. Again, I could sort of work outside. So if I say add a node and add outside that node, so I can work the opposite way round. Again, I could sort of start to sort of darken
Very cool.
that surrounding area if I go to town with it. This is sort of intensive on my MacBook. This is real kind of machine learning we've got here. Also on this one as well, I could do sort of a little blur. So again, for example, I could add a bit of a Gaussian blur on it just to give you an idea of what it looks like. So again, I could apply sort of the blur to the background, and as you can see, I might just dial that down a touch. But as you can see, it sort of lifts him out the background, so I can make him brighter, background darker.
If you zoom into him there, how does that look on the edges of him? Because that's, of course, the area that this would fall down is the different separation between him and the background. And it's looking pretty good there.
It's
maybe a
pretty
little
good.
bit on the top of his hat. But
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe a little bit. I could tweak
that's
it.
not bad.
What I have done, just so you can actually see a result, I'm just going to sort of load in a version. So you can see with this, I've lifted him down in the background, said I've sort of tweaked it. But when you play that
natural.
back, it looks a little bit more natural.
That's nice.
And that's all done through a depth map. And again, doing that and sort of adding a depth of field where you go, well, I've got this bit here and this bit here and this bit here, would take you a lot of masking in Resolve to do that.
Even using the fancy masks like Magic Mask and stuff like that would still be a little bit sort of hit and miss sometimes around things like arms waving. And I find it sometimes because I gesticulate wildly with my hands in the middle of videos, that trips it up.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. And this is where sort of when we launched these effects, I was sort of bowled over. Things like the Relight. The Relight was unbelievable.
Yes, let's definitely look at that.
So the Relight, you can literally relight a scene, and it's volumetric like. It's unbelievable. So again, the shot in the garage here, really what I want a light source coming through this window here, because that's where the sun's shining through. And I want the rest of the scene to, I just want to change the lighting on it. And this is where the Relight tool becomes amazing, because again, what I can do is I can just sort of drag and drop the effect on. It should, again, it's quite intensive on the system, but it'll give me this sort of preview, this bump map. And again, I've got a point source. So what I want to do is I can I just want to drag this over to the window. Again, I can turn off the preview to get it in the right position. So I want the sort of light coming in from there. And again, I can decide how much or how little light is coming into that. So again, if I just turn off the preview, and as you say, it's the same sort of thing. I've created a mat for my grade. So again, now normally what I do is add another node, add the alpha channel in here. And again, what I'm going to do, I might go a bit crazy with this. I might kind of really kind of ramp this up, really kind of push the gain to almost the point where it's blown out. I might just dial in a little bit of color. I want this light to be a touch warmer. Again, I've got the ability to say, actually, I'd like you to add an outside node to this. So again, in an outside node, I can just start to really pull this down. Might as well just go into my HDR tools, pull the shadows down a touch further. Now, the reason this is amazing is this fact that, again, if I just sort of step through this clip, it's volumetric light. So when the light changes, you can see the light behaves naturally. And again, to actually do this with power windows, it would take you a long time, such a long time. What I'm going to do again is, because again, it's quite heavy on the system. So normally what you do with these things is you sort of, set them up and then you cache them. So again, let me just load the cache version in and you get the idea. So what I've done with this, it's the volumetric light and I've tracked it. I've just put a point tracker on the effect. So as you can see, as it moves round, the light moves with the room. So as it moves around, it lights the ceiling, it lights different walls. I think to do that just with kind of standard power windows would be nigh on impossible to do. So ultimately, like you can see with this, you can change the entire lighting of your scene if you wish. And yeah, when you look at that, you go, that is quite incredible.
It looks like someone's holding a light and sort of pointing it at the ceiling, doesn't it?
Yeah. So it's, as you say, it's these things, the magic mask is the said we'll come on to the magic mask, but it's the depth map, the Relight said. The magic mask is, I have to say, the magic mask is arguably one of my favorites, because if you've ever rotoed something, and at some point everybody sort of needs roto work, because again, is you just want to lift somebody out of the background, or this scene is it's a little bit drab. We might want Robin just to have a little bit more colour in him, but not as much colour in the scene. So again, Neural Engine, it's a studio only feature. We've got something called a magic mask. Now the magic mask, as you can see, we've got it for people or for objects. So for a person, again, I can identify a whole person. So all I've got to do is just sort of drag a selection. I'll make this better processing. And if I turn on my overlay, come on overlay. There we go. It's sort of, again, the machine looks and goes, okay, I've sort of identified a person. And now when I track this, it's going to go and it's going to track through. And again, it's simply learning the outline. And again, to actually roto this and spend time getting masks to be,
it'd be hours, if not days.
Yeah,
working at my speed.
Again, I'll stop that there. So we're not doing. I'm sorry. I apologise. It had nearly done. So again, what this has done, it's created the overlay, and then what I would normally do here is say, well, pipe the input in.
What are the benefits of having a separate node which you're then making the changes to and combining it with the alpha key, rather than applying an effect or like a color effect or something like that onto that same node?
It all depends on how you work. It's just how I like to work. Also as well, I can possibly show you a reason kind of why I like to separate the effect and the grade. Quite often as well, if your machine is running slowly, what you may want to do is cache this node. So again, you've got the ability to cache the node. So if I turn that on, it would cache the node. However, if I've got a grade on, every time I adjusted that grade, you'd have to recache it. Whereas if you cache it now and do the effect afterwards, you can constantly kind of change your color.
Very cool.
But the node cache remains the same. So
that makes sense.
It's normally a sort of a workflow, thing.
Makes sense.
But again, I'll show you. We'll do kind of one of the things that I love in the color page, because you can work in different types of nodes and well as borrow things. It just makes life so much easier. So yeah, for this one, we tracked Robin in here. So again, what I can now do is I can sort of, I may just use my curves for this. I can go and sort of lift him very slightly. Sort of maybe not make him too dark, just sort of lift him up a touch. Just use my curves a little bit. Again, I'm working really quickly here, dial in a little bit of saturation. And as you can see, it dials in the grade for him without affecting any of the background. But as we're saying, is one of the really cool things is if you start to use this with nodes, you can do some very, very clever things. So this is a prime example. So all I've got on this clip, just to sort of show this, is I've just done a grade to lift it slightly. And basically, I've got a power window. All I've done in this is I've done a power window, and that power window's been tracked. So there's not much movement in the shot, but there's a little bit of camera movement. So the power window's just been tracked to that movement. Now, again, at this stage, you're sort of looking at this going, the clip itself isn't great because I've got all this kind of rubbish in the skyline. And the question is then going, well, the client comes in and goes, I like the shot of the driver, but can we actually get rid of the sky? I want a different sky in there. And at this stage, you might be going, well, I can go into the Fusion page, do some matte painting. I can try and paint this out, but then I've got to do some tracking. I'm going to go and find another different bit of sky. Whereas in the color page, you can do this very, very quickly using the magic mask and sort of different nodes. Again, you can use the layer nodes and parallel nodes in the free version, but obviously with this, it's harnessing the power of, the AI plus the node workflow. So to begin with, we have an effect. This is in the free version, so I'm going to use a free effect in here. I thought I had it in my favorites. Do I not? I do. There we go. Got something called sky replacement. So I can just apply a sky replacement, and if I drag this in here, it'll look like that. Okay, nothing great. It's just using my alpha channel of my power window to replace the sky. I can from here go, well, actually, what I'd really want is I'd want some artificial sky. That doesn't look realistic particularly. Let's go. Let me go and actually just kind of grab the color of the original sky. So there we go. That's not getting too bad. I might want some, might want some clouds in there as well. A bit of cloud detail. Cloud opacity. We'll dial that down. We're trying to get something that looks a little bit realistically like sky. So obviously from here we've put the sky in, but obviously it cuts. Oops, sorry, just knocked my mic. Obviously it knocks. It gets rid of the driver.
Yeah, there's one big glaring problem here with this shot, isn't it?
We've chopped him off. So what I can actually do is I can actually grab a layer node. So what this layer node is going to do is, again, it's going to combine the results. It sort of works like layers in Photoshop. You can have a layer on bottom, layer on top. So this second node here connects, and it sits on top of the sky replacement. So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to drag the output from my first node. And then if I use the magic mask, and with this I'm going to use an object. I think I'll just use the object.
And presumably here you could use depth map or something like that. There's other ways of doing this as well.
There's other ways of doing this as well. So again, if I just do a big selection here, and let me look for a better result. Again, things I love about the magic mask is that if there's any sort of bits missing, I can just drag and add those in. And now if I track this, get a little bit of tracking. Ooh, it's lost his arm a little bit, but that's okay. We can... So there we go. Admittedly, my magic mask would need... So again, you can sort of start to do things like sky replacement so quickly. And again, you don't have to be a VFX expert to do it. Just using the magic mask and a bit of sky replacement, you can do that. I could throw a patch replacer in here. Again, this is...
and presumably you could easily use this to not replace the sky, but adjust the sky. Say you wanted to add a little bit of pink into it or something.
Absolutely, yeah. So again, yeah. If my sky replacement looks a little bit too much, I don't necessarily need to use that. Admittedly, I've replaced it, but as you say, if I wanted to simply put a little bit of sort of pink into it, as you can see, I can add the pink, and it adds the pink into that, and doesn't get added to the driver.
You know that it's never going to add it to the driver because of that layer mask down below.
Yeah. And
cool.
this is sort of the advantage of working in it, and again, sort of using other effects. So, if you've got little awkward areas like this, what I can actually do is if I add another corrector node, and I'll add this in. Again, it's why we use nodes quite a lot. So I could take sort of the mask output of the sky, add it into this bit here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reverse that. And now I'm just sort of working on this area here. So we've got these little sort of areas on the ground where the poles were reflecting. Right. Again, a studio only feature is the patch replacer. So again, a patch replacer, it'll just clone an area of an image, so you can sort of clone it over something else. So
again, I had no idea this existed.
So I can just do that. And again, I won't play this back for you, but I've got the ability to then go and track that as well. So
very cool.
It gives you an idea of, when you start to really pair some of the studio features together, it does just become so powerful that, you can do shot cleanup. Well, as I've done there in about 2 minutes.
Sure.
My mask looks a bit soft, but we'll ignore that.
In 2 minutes and without leaving the color page as well. Exactly. You don't have to go into Fusion.
I don't have to go into Fusion. Again, if you want to do more complex stuff, you can do matte painting and all sorts of things in Fusion. But if you do simply want to do sort of VFX shots quickly in the color page, you've got the ability to do that. And the magic mask especially gives you the ability to do that.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Right. We've reached sort of the end of the hour that we sort of aim for. Is there anything else that you wanted to make sure that we touched upon?
The final thing I just mentioned is I've just touched on some of the features because these are the features we get asked a lot about. If I can just tab into my Safari and take a look on the Blackmagic website, if you want to know more about Resolve, you can simply go into the product page, go onto the Davinci Resolve and Fusion software. If you click on either of these pages, it takes you through to the Resolve page. So, if you want to know what's new in 18.6, if you want to know about training, there's a training tab in there. Also, as well, if you want to have a full list of features that are included in the studio version, in the support page, if you scroll down and scroll down the middle column, I'll tell you what, if I click on Davinci Resolve and Fusion software first, if I scroll down here, you've got something that says Davinci Resolve Studio and iPad features. So we've got a version of Resolve for iPad, but that obviously, with it being on an iPad, it can't do everything. So this is a document that will, again, I can show you what it looks like. You can scroll through and it'll go through all the differences. As you say, it's got a list of what a desktop system will do, what you can do on iPads, and sort of also it does work on non-silicon based iPads. But again, just to make sure we don't break people's iPads, certain features are turned off in that. And again, if you scroll through this, you can see timeline and render resolution higher than Ultra HD. You can see it says Studio, and that denotes it's a Studio only feature. So again, if you want a full list of everything, that's in there.
Very cool. And also, before we wrap up, as we said at the beginning, if you are looking at purchasing Davinci Resolve Studio and you haven't already got it, sometimes the better way of doing it is by purchasing some hardware that includes it with it. And that is, of course, all the Blackmagic cameras, but also is the Resolve. In fact, if you've still got Safari open, could you go to ProAV's website and just type Blackmagic in the search bar? So all the Resolve panels, all of the speed editor, the editing keyboard, the micro, the mini, the full Resolve panel, all of it. So this is the Blackmagic brand page, and now if you click on post, this is the sort of dedicated Blackmagic area of our website, if you like. And this, as you scroll down, has all of the relevant bits and bobs. So all of the panels on there. Yeah. So the speed editor, the editor keyboard, micro panel, mini panel, they all include it. And you can see there with the speed editor, it's only slightly more than just buying the software by itself. Yeah. So really is a bit of a no-brainer if you don't already own a Blackmagic camera and you're interested in getting the studio version. Yeah, absolutely. As you say, I would always encourage that because you say you're getting a piece of hardware for... Again, looking at XVAT now, I can't do the maths. £55. I didn't realise I'd have to do maths today. 55, yeah. One thing I will say to you is, just the Blackmagic. If I just go back to our website as well, if you do want to know the products that come with the studio now on our website, if I look at the Pro cameras, you can see which ones they come. That say, and I'm looking at ways to make that clear on ours as well. Yeah. So again, if you're not sure, again, I think it should be the same with the panels. Yeah. So you can see wherever it says Davinci Resolve Studio above a product, it includes a studio license with it. Fantastic. Right. Thank you so much for that. I think that was a really enlightening session. I don't know about the people watching, but I certainly learned a lot from that. So thank you so much, Simon. My pleasure. Thanks for having me. No problem. Thank you all for watching. I think we'll leave it there. I'll see you very soon. Bye.
Ready, go!
1, 2, 3, 4. It's class, yeah. You're gonna shine a light. Battle your battles, you got a talent, how to the cure. If it's trash, yeah, you're gonna take it out. Handle it rapidly, got the magic, you got it for sure. You can see what's in future.
Oh my god.
Mission sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
It's astonishing.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.
2, 1, action.
Meet Swit's latest RGBW panel innovations, the Van Gogh 70 and Van Gogh 100 LED panels. The Van Gogh series uses exclusive